Hello, my name is Miriam McLemore, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today to share the story of transformation from Capital One. Mark Mathewson from Capital One, CIO of Retail Banking, is going to share their transformation story. Like many organizations, Capital One decided to transform to create agility and innovation for their organization. But after the initial pilot, scaling for the larger organization did prove challenging. And Mark is going to share with us today how they accomplished such a broad transformation. Mark, welcome. Could you please further introduce yourself?
Thanks, Miriam. Happy to be here with you today. As Miriam said, my name is Mark Mathewson. I am the divisional CIO for our retail bank, which entails responsibility for all of our software engineering and operations in support of our direct bank, our retail outlets and branches and cafes nationally, as well as all of the tools that support the associates who support that business.
Mark, can you tell me a little bit more about the DNA at Capital One and the tech transformation that you went through?
I can. Capital One has a really interesting story. We were founded on an insight in the credit market to try to solve for customer needs that weren't being met by other credit providers. And we did that using data. We did that with a very kind of innovative sort of approach to banking. And that's a thread that continues through the company today in pretty much everything that we do in all of our businesses. And so I would say our DNA is really entrepreneurial, which was really helpful as we went through our tech transformation. And we started thinking about this tech transformation 9 years ago. I mean, it was a really broad goal that the company had to change how we operate from the inside and out. And really the premise behind how we wanted to change was to become a technology company that does banking rather than a bank that leverages technology. And while I think it's easy to say that, it's really, really hard to do. I mean, it requires that you transform not only your infrastructure, you transform your talent model, you have to transform the way that people work together to deliver a variety of outcomes. And so we really started soup to nuts with an intentional view on how to transform ourselves so that we could better compete with where we believe banking is going in the future.
Yeah, Mark, and I love that comment about being intentional. Can you take us on the journey from the initial pilot to really broadening the capability for the organization?
Yeah, it was back in I believe it was 2014 when we really first started experimenting with the cloud. And we started experimenting internally with the cloud. We had a fledgling capability that we called our C Cloud, which was a private cloud offering. At the same time, we also had engineers that were experimenting with AWS, starting to just figure out how they could set up environments, push small workloads, develop some really non-critical applications out in the public cloud. And at some point we got to a fork in the road where we had to make a decision on, do we continue to invest in building this private cloud capability, or do we take what's being developed at a much more rapid pace in the public cloud arena and really jump all in on leveraging the public cloud so that we could have our engineers really focus on what our core competency is and what we're here to do, which is to build digital customer experiences for banking. And that answer, when we finally made the call, became a guiding principle for really a lot of the rest of the transformation, which was go all in on public cloud, figure out how to work backwards from what's going to take to be successful in going all in on public cloud, and changing how we think about provisioning infrastructure, and changing how we think about talent and skill sets, and changing all the practices that we use as we work together as a company to center around being a public cloud versus a private cloud and internally hosted organization.
Mark, I love that focus on what Capital One's mission is, and not spending time on cloud development when you could leverage partners as you did with AWS. Can you share a couple of examples of that work that Capital One to really become a digital bank?
Yeah, there's a lot of good examples, and maybe what I'll do is take you through a little bit of the journey. We started really thinking about how we work, and we decided to pivot our way of working into agile. I think we all remember the days where everything was waterfall, and they were these big, long provision projects that took years. And we decided that we needed to get a much more agile and rapid way of working, and so we started thinking about how do we change our team structure and how we interact with each other to be more agile, and that took the form of the agile methodology, but just a lot more rapidly moving practices to make sure that we could go fast. And then we started thinking a bit more about how we build things, and we made a declaration that we wanted to go all in on developing APIs. We're going to interact. Our software was going to be. We're going to interact with other components internally based on APIs, and we were going to make our services that are available externally available through APIs. And then we started talking about leveraging open source software. Like, how are we going to leverage open source software rather than proprietary third-party products to build our software? So these were all just key pieces that we started thinking about how do we start to really operate more like a technology company. And as we started doing those things, we said, well, now this is great. How do we leverage the cloud as the infrastructure component of that enables all of those pieces to come together in terms of how we get products out to market in a very rapid way. We've got the scalable infrastructure available. We have interoperable APIs. We've got open source software that helps to attract talent and is also easy to find developers who understand how to incorporate those things into solutions. And you put that all together, and that really became a pretty powerful recipe for how we get products to market a lot more quickly. And as evidence points of that, we have seen over time that now it used to take us months to provision new infrastructure for a new project and really get engineers going and shipping features. Now we can provision that infrastructure really in minutes and get that out to developers' hands in ways that they can actually start experimenting quickly. We're also seeing in production that we're able to more rapidly release new features out to the marketplace. Like, it used to be months where we would have release schedules, quarterly or monthly release schedules. Now, in many cases, for a lot of our applications, we're seeing release schedules that are more in days and sometimes in hours, which has really been game changing and really powerful for us.
And for me, that is game changing within IT, right? Not having those wait times and really being able to respond to your business requirements. Has the business felt it as well? Do they see the power of cloud?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I will say it's been a journey, but now they really do, and I think for a couple of reasons. I think during this transformation, not only did we just say, hey, let's turn on the cloud for a bunch of engineers, we spent a lot of time laying the foundation across the business, really, and the messaging came from the top on why do we want to use the cloud? What are the benefits of the cloud? And we really empowered our engineers to help tell that story to their business partners. And we as leaders spent a lot of time talking to our business partners around why prioritize this work of picking up existing workloads and migrating them into the cloud. And, we spent a lot of time talking about, one of the things I've already mentioned, which is speed. When we make this investment, look how quickly we're going to be able to get new features out and new capabilities out versus what we were able to do before. We talked a lot about talent. These are the tools and capabilities that the market of software engineering talent out there demand. And if we want to stay ahead of the game and be able to attract the best and brightest to deliver the types of capabilities that we need to build digitally, the only way to do that is to offer tools and technologies that those engineers really value. And so we spent a lot of time laying the groundwork and helping our business leaders across the organization understand that. It took some time, it took some consistency, but now we really do have strong buy-in, and we actually have seen, evidence throughout different scenarios, that have further reinforced for our businesses why the value of the cloud was so important on our journey.
So, Mark, data is obviously a very powerful asset at Capital One and any kind of company today, but particularly I would think in banking. Can you tell us a little bit about the power that this technology transformation has unlocked for the use of data for your organization?
Absolutely. And it really ties back to something I mentioned earlier in the founding of the company. We were founded on a thing we like to call information-based strategy, which is all about how you unlock the power of data to find insights that others may not easily be able to find. And that really takes building great infrastructure to be able to use the data that you have to quickly run analytics, to quickly find those insights, and to quickly put those back into play in terms of business decisions and strategies. And the tech transformation for us has really changed how we're able to build that infrastructure. We by making the decision to go all in on cloud, we've been able to unlock a lot of silos of data that have traditionally been in various different pockets of the organization and put them all in one place. So we now have a lake based in the cloud that offers analytics on any type of data that we capture or produce throughout the organization. And it's a thing that we just absolutely wouldn't have been able to do with the speed that we're able to do it now in the cloud. It also allows us to rethink about how we govern that data. I mean, anybody who's been in this industry a long time just knows that data management and data governance is one of the key challenges. Well, now that you've got to re-architect all that data in the cloud, you have the opportunity to rethink, how do you capture all the data quality measures that you need at source? How do you put the right controls in place so that when data is published, it's clean, we know what that data is, it's labeled, and we know the quality of that data before it gets consumed by analytical processes or models that we build with it downstream. And so it really, the transformation has given us an opportunity to really rethink all of that from top to bottom. And the infrastructure that we now have and the tools that we now have at our disposal have allowed us to do that at scale. So that not only do we have that data all in one place, but we've got the type of compute power to run almost any kind of workload on that data to feed into models, fraud models, to feed into customer decisioning models, to feed into recommendation engines, a variety of different things. So it really has been a dramatic improvement to our capabilities to produce better analytics.
Yeah, I love that. And you spoke earlier about the education that you did for the business on cloud and the capabilities that would bring. And I imagine the example of data is powerful in really connecting the dots for the business and the technology. And often, in customers that I speak to, there's some tension between the product team and the tech team. Can you share a little bit about how you've used both the education and the power of those data examples to break down some of those walls? And I think you said create kind of a shared ownership model. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. It's an ongoing discussion for us, and one that I think we're getting a lot better at, which is, instead of having product and business people who just think about, what is the next feature that I need to get out to a customer, and tech people who think about, how do I solve vulnerabilities, or how do I, produce data streams off of existing infrastructure, and things that really feel, a lot more behind the scenes to business people traditionally. We've really gotten our product and engineering teams to work together and think about joint ownership. Like if we think about a data product, how do we not only make sure that data product has high quality data, is easily consumable, but also that it sits on resilient infrastructure, that it is secure. Data is tokenized or encrypted where needed. The only way when you work together between tech and product to make sure that both understand all of those considerations, you end up with not just a great product that provides something useful to customers, but one that provides something useful to customers that's also secure, that's also reliable, that has market leading uptime and those kind of things. And I think you only get that by creating that shared ownership. If you've got great features that fall over in the middle of the night, that doesn't help anybody. But now that you've got our business partners and product partners understanding the value of the reliability that we can now build into products, they're really just as interested in pushing those things forward as we on the engineering and technology side are.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. So what is next in Capital One's journey? Are you done, or does the journey continue?
It is never done. It is never done. I think what's next for us in the journey is just continuing down the path of building cloud native, highly resilient and reliable services. When you go to the cloud, we're able to take a portion of our applications and modernize them along the way. Obviously, some applications, as we went all in on the cloud, we had to pick them up, we had to lift them and shift them in place and put them into the cloud. And so now we continue to just think about how do we modernize all of the remaining applications that weren't modernized along the way, leveraging cloud native services that are continuously being developed and improved by providers like AWS. And rebuilding those clouds and those applications in a much more modernized way is thing one. The second thing that is next for us on the journey is really a continued move towards serverless. We really believe that our engineers want to build features. They want to build data products. They want to build and deploy models. And they want to ship rapidly. And they don't want to spend their time managing infrastructure. There's a lot of pain that comes with managing container images on servers. There's lots of pain that comes with keeping up with vulnerabilities. Lots of pain associated with configuration management across a variety of different platforms. And so the push towards serverless, we really believe in, and really believe that as we continue our journey, getting to the place where engineers can write code and deploy that code and not have to worry about any of the underlying infrastructure that manages or runs that code, or any of the vulnerabilities or concerns behind that, we're going to have a much more powerful experience for our engineers and a lot more productivity, quite frankly, rather than spending time on a bunch of the mundane and run the engine type tasks that we've had to in the past.
Yeah, and I do think there's such great power in serverless and making that move. Is there any advice that you would have for others that are embarking on that journey?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing has to do with governance. It's a different context for thinking about how to run your workloads. And for many of us who have been running server-based workloads for years, we've gotten really good at how to control those configurations, how to manage the configurations, how to keep up with vulnerabilities over time, and how to otherwise govern a server-based concept. Serverless is a different construct, but still has, especially for a regulated industry, implications that you really need to think about so that you can understand, how your applications are remaining in compliance sitting on top of a serverless infrastructure. Where are the risks within a serverless infrastructure, and how do you build controls in the cloud in a way that you can control for those risks, without fear? Because the last thing that you want is to get into a different compute context that you don't understand and later find the risks and gaps that open you up to data protection exposures or operational risk failures inside of the environment. So I think the biggest thing is just to really make sure that you understand what is different about that compute construct, what is different about the risks, and what type of controls that you need to automate and make sure that are in place to use it safely and effectively.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. What such great insights into the journey that Capital One has been on and continues on. A bit tongue in cheek to say, "Are you done?" I believe, like you do, you're never done, but the getting to those next level of capabilities like serverless is very powerful. So thank you so much for your time and your insights.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miriam. It's been a pleasure.